What's up, Liron here, and in this episode of Painting Masters, we'll be looking at works by Sergey Kuznetsov. Now, this is very interesting. I've been following him for a while now on Instagram, and I was sure it's just a watercolor painter or an artist. Well, in doing research for this very video, I discovered he's actually the chief architect of Moscow, which is insane to think about because his work portrays architecture in such an interesting way and light, pun intended. And I believe he studied architecture from 95 till 2001. He became the chief architect in 2012. And I think what he's been praised a lot for and what I love about his work, he has both the art and the business side of things. I know he's been very successful business-wise as well. But what I love about it is that it's work by an architect, but it has a lot of artistic flair. So it's not just very accurate drawings or paintings. They actually tell a story, they convey a message in a very, very good way, and they direct the viewer's attention in an excellent manner. Okay, so this is what I personally take from his artwork, and with that being said, without further ado, let's look at some of his paintings. So we'll get started with one of the paintings I love the most of his, and that I think best show what I love about his style in general. So he really keeps it simple, which I love, and you know I'm biased towards cars. I love cars wherever they are, so there's an excellent portrayal of cars here. But aside from that, notice how he really gets the message across. There aren't too many details, nothing's in excess, but also because of his knowledge in architecture, it's really on point. The details are there, the buildings feel real. All of the small, his attention to how the balconies are. And then on top of that, you have good watercolor principles such as a good play of warms and cools, a good color harmony and balance, so a lot of muted colors that allow him to use a punchy color here and there to really direct the viewer's attention, which is one of the things I think he does best. Now we're going to go over these rather quickly, because I have a lot of them and I really didn't know which ones I didn't like, because I kind of liked them all. So next up we have this one of my all-time favorites of his because of all of those different brush strokes, the vertical ones that show the complexity of the structure. And aside from the complexity, there's also a really good sense of scale and the magnitude of the building with all of the crowd at the front. Just makes the building look so much more imparting and big. It just feels big, and then you see in them, and the values themselves are. The painting is divided into very interesting layers of values, if you will. You have the mid values here, and then that allows for the darks to really shine, quote unquote, because they can't shine, obviously, but he really knows how to allow enough range of value to bring the message across. And besides that, also the people in the foreground are kind of, they turn the building into a backdrop, but this backdrop is really detailed and beautiful and is an inherent part of the painting. And you get to see all of these, and I have to remind you, this is an architect, so you would expect some very logical, super accurate paintings, but it's not just that, it's far beyond that. It's art, it's beautiful. Here's another one I really, really love. There's a good sense of height here, I would say, with barely any details, just some cars, some awnings, a building or two. There are the traffic lights, the red lights. I'm not sure where this was painted, but it may be New York, maybe, I'm not sure. And again, we're going to go over these quickly because I love them all. Some kind of a tunnel scene. I love that when there's a lot of darkness at the front, and then at the back you view things through the tunnel and they get lighter. Now notice how his opaque use of paint can really tell you where he wanted you to look, but it doesn't spell it out for you too much. You just kind of naturally gravitate towards these areas, and then you get the light here at the top, and it's just beautiful. Next up, we have this scene, again, a magnificent one. There is not a lot of details here, but what I will say is very present here is an interesting composition. You get to see the way the building at the top is very tall, and then the one on the right is quite short. And you really sometimes need to zoom out in order to really appreciate these pieces. But the composition is very interesting, not to mention all of the horizontal and vertical lines, and the placements of each object. And you can tell here the car is really in the middle, but it works well in the balance of the entire piece, with the car on the very left edge and the right edge and all the background. It just works well, and he breaks a lot of rules, quote unquote, but it looks so good. A lot of these elements play just a compositional role, really. This was really cool. I found that online as well, just the way he paints people. He has become, he's improved since. This is, I think, a relatively older piece, because I looked at older posts of his on Instagram, and there is a significant change. This reminds me more of the older stuff. Here's another one I love, and what I love the most about this is the cars here, the way they're arranged in different directions, and they're very accurate, by the way. The drawing underneath it and that the application of paint kept it very accurate, and of course the building, the architecture. Another aspect of his work that I really love is his use of dry brush marks. It's something I love in Alvaro Castanet's work as well, very prominent there. If you zoom in just a bit, you'll get to see this. So much of the work is done in dry brush after the fact, to add the small details. My dog just sneezed. To add the smaller details of the painting. Then there's birds and all the beautiful gaps of light in the sky, but really the dry brush here is spectacular. You can also see it in the highlights that he added on the cars, with some thick opaque paint or gouache, even at the top of the cars, just to fix their shape a little, which I love. So much dry brush, and I love it. Another one, I know this one, pretty major award, if I'm not mistaken. And here what I want to direct your attention to is, again, it's a very simple composition, actually, and a very simple scene, but the colors here work really well, and you get to see a lot of dominance of blue, and then of brown, and some sienna, and some yellow, maybe some kind of raw sienna, or some kind of an ochre, and this flag waving with the red. And if you notice the layer underneath, he really allowed that red to merge into what was under that, and then he added the shadows in on the second wash, probably, and that wash really pulls things together. And finally, as always, the dry brush. I absolutely love it, and it really adds this contrast when it comes to, if you look at these details, okay, these brush strokes, these brush marks. Underneath it, you have a wash that's very well blended, very fluid, but then on top come these harsh brush strokes that make it look so beautiful. Another one, a bit of an older piece, but an excellent sense of light, and a very good portrayal of the person, the bicycle here, all the people in the background, this kind of a net thing. It's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful work. These people are excellent. I really love how he merges the people with the shadows. I'm gonna show this in another painting as well. He loves merging the figures with the shadows underneath them and let it all flow together. And he also has a way of simplifying the shadows. So there's this tree and then shade under the tree, and it all connects together. This is just one big shadowy shape, which I really love. Then there are these poles, which are very interesting, the way he did them. You have a lot of yellows, reds, blues, a very clear color scheme that I think works very well, and a lot of bold, I guess, brush strokes of blue inside the shadows and of pure paint in general, which work really well. A lot of courage to do these kinds of works, and I like to do it that way too, but I know a lot of people tell me as well it takes a lot of courage, so I actually believe them. Sometimes you're so close to the picture you don't even realize what you're doing, but other people looking at it say it's very different from what they do. Here's another excellent example, probably a scene from Venice. And again, there's this contrast, always. The contrast between the darks and the lights in the background. The harsh, dry brush strokes, and then the more fluid, flowy, and very messy, don't get me wrong, very messy wash at the background. And then you get the contrast of the reds and the blues. So his paintings are contrasted on so many levels. This really reminds me of Alvaro Castanet's work in many different regards. A lot of the good qualities that Alvaro has, he has as well. And I love the fact that he applies a lot of colors. I don't like Alvaro's work that are black and white as much. So this is perfect for me. There's this guy here at the very foreground that it took me some while to see it, by the way, when I first looked at this painting, but a very well executed painting. Let's see what else we have here, and we'll run through them because there's a lot. This is kind of a New York, I think, scene. And if you notice the bold strokes of orange here, and he uses the paint almost straight out of the tube, and so what happens is it leaves a very strong stain that then kind of blends into the rest of the wetness of the paper, and it's beautiful. And notice how the sun's reflecting on the rooftops of the cars. There is a bit of that orange tint to it, showing that and conveying really well that this is a sunset scene, probably. There's this truck here that I could kind of tell that it's a truck without him telling me anything about it. So very, very, very impressive work. This is one of my favorites as well. It shows, I think, a very important aspect of, again, merging the shadows. So you get this big foreground kind of shadow under all of the figures, and it really is important that he connects it with all of the figures. Otherwise, it'll look a bit fragmented, as you know. I don't like when it looks fragmented. And then the buildings and the background kept very light, very, very light, so that they don't interfere with what happens in the foreground. We have a couple of more. What I love about this one the most is that it gives me an example of how to improve myself. Why? Because one of the recent works I did not command the viewer's attention well enough. I had a car here at the front, and the car at the back was as dark as the car at the front. What he does, he throws that to the wind, and it doesn't matter if this car appeared to be as dark as this car at the front. He actually makes it lighter out of choice to make sure that we focus on this car at the front, and that this car is kind of pushed towards the back. Very smart and very clever, because it also requires that the building be a little darker than the car, and he does that very well as well. So a lot of smart things going on here, not to even begin mentioning the architecture and the rest of the contrasty elements that we talked about earlier, and the person here, and the good use of shapes. The negative painting around this kind of part of the building that protrudes outside and is more exposed to light. So good. I really enjoy his paintings. Here's another one I love with all of these messy lines of the second wash that's so well merged together and well blended together. How he keeps some of the people's shirts maybe white, and then some reds and yellows. This works so well, and this does strike me more as an Eastern European, Russian architecture with all of these domes here at the back, or not domes, I don't even know how to call them, but they probably have an official name. But I absolutely love this. And finally, I want to wrap it up. I think this is the last one with this one. Again, not a lot going on here, just a bunch of people, and it looks so good. And I think they're going up a bridge. I think these are figures as well. Let's zoom out a bit. And you can really tell that there is an audience here, crowd of people maybe traveling. This guy's snapping a photo with a selfie stick. That's at least what I imagine. This part looks almost photorealistic, really, I have to say. This guy or girl here, they look just like the real thing with this maybe straw hat and the backpack. It all looks so, so good. So this is what makes me love Sergey's work. Just spectacular. It's what I would say as a viewer, it's the perfect style for me to enjoy. Really is. I don't know if necessarily, again, this is what I want my paintings to look like, because there is a distinction to be made there, but it's the style I enjoy seeing the most. It's like Alvaro Castanet, only more colorful, which I love. It's like really the perfect thing for me. And I really hope you loved his paintings as well, and you enjoyed them as well. And I am curious, so let me know in a comment down below what you think, and now we can wrap up this video. Thank you so much. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, what I think the most important part for me is how to command the viewer's attention in such a successful manner. Because what I say my work sometimes lacks in is, especially when I'm working outside, I tend to give everything an equal weight. So the light and shadow may be accurate, but an object that's much further away from the viewer will still be quite dark and quite sharp. And when I look at it, it does look like that, but that's where we as painters and artists have the artistic license to change things around so that we can convey the message in a bit of a better way. So this is one thing I take from his art, definitely. And also a lot of dry brush work, which I absolutely love, and the way he utilizes it is really genius. There's also a lot of smart and clever use of warm and cool colors, and just a very atmospheric feel to it that I love. But in any case, you can tell I really, really love his work. I'm gonna link down everything below, like his Instagram and so on, so you can check it out for yourself and also read about the person. Very interesting. And with that being said, we're gonna wrap this video up. Please give it a like if you enjoyed it. That really helps to tell YouTube to show it to more people. And also don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button, because what that does is actually make sure you get notifications for new videos, because otherwise a lot of people I know don't get them. Okay, so thank you so much, and I will see you again in another episode and in another vid real soon.